ever thrived under democracies. And it's not just Jews. History is pretty definitive that democracy, pluralism, and the rule of law are essential conditions for minority groups to survive. When a society is not free, one way or another, the guns of the majority are always inevitably turned on the minorities. Understanding this fact is what first sparked my intense fascination with politics in the first place. As I understood it, politics was the biggest determining factor of whether a person could chase their dreams, fulfill their ambitions, and live up to their potential. It seems so horrifically unfair to me that certain kids in certain places did not have a chance to fulfill their dreams simply because their government didn't like their religion, or their skin color, or their tribal affiliation in some parts of the world. So began my political career. I became obsessed with learning everything I could about politics of other countries. In college, I earned my degree in comparative politics and Jewish studies. I worked in DC for several NGOs focused on strengthening democracy abroad. And then one day, the world seemed to stop spinning on its axis. October 27, 2018, and that date might sound familiar to some of you. I received a news alert on my iPhone, a mass shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, 11 Jews dead, and what would be the deadliest attack in American Jews in history. I remember feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. I felt isolated, disoriented, restless. I wanted to be with the people I loved. Shortly after, I moved back to Michigan. My feeling of restlessness eventually gave way to feeling determined. I felt called, and I wanted to lead. That's when I had the idea to start the Michigan Democratic Jewish Caucus, and had the opportunity in doing so to take voice in the fight against anti-Semitism, white supremacy, hate crimes, and extremism in this state. Later, I worked as Director of Communications at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, where I learned how crimes were actually investigated and prosecuted, and I observed how difficult it could be to issue hate crime charges under Michigan's 1980s era Ethnic Intimidation Act, a law which notably, as Rabbi Jed mentioned, excluded protections for LGBT people, people with disabilities, seniors, or ethnic groups, all groups which we know have been targeted by hate crimes in Michigan and across the country. In 2021, when I decided against all reasonable logic to run for state representative, I campaigned on a promise to combat hate crimes in Michigan and to strengthen this inadequate law. When I took office in January 2023, I immediately got to work on 2 pieces of legislation to update and strengthen Michigan's woefully outdated and inadequate hate crime law. I was on a mission to transform Michigan from a national laggard to a national leader in hate crime prevention, intervention, and response, and nothing and no one was going to deter me, although they would certainly do everything they could to try. After months and months of painstaking work, in late April 2023, I stood alongside Attorney General Nessel and I introduced the Michigan Hate Crime Act and the Institutional Desecration Act. Now, this is the point in the story where I could do a dramatic play-by-play of just how excruciating it was to pass these bills over the past 2 years. The interest groups that threatened to oppose the bills if I didn't accommodate all of their nitty-gritty demands. How I was blindsided by a highly organized and well-funded right-wing media disinformation campaign that put the bills on ice for 16 months and sparked a campaign to recall me from office just 6 months into my term. I could tell you about how many times the bills seemed dead one evening only to be resurrected the next morning and then dead again that following afternoon. And that isn't even hyperbole. It happened multiple times. Or the emotionally draining game of whack-a-mole that I had to play as one legislator or another seemed ready to tank the bills. And I bet you'd really be on the edge of your seat if I told you about the unimaginable legislative brinkmanship that I had to engage in, how I held my own against the most powerful people in the state of Michigan and forced them to the negotiating table and finally strong-armed these bills through the state legislature by sheer brute force. But I appreciate that. But we really don't have time for all of that, so I guess you'll just have to read my memoir one day to get the juicy inside scoop. Suffice to say, after tremendous toil and effort, in December of 2023, the Institutional Desecration Act was signed into law by Governor Whitmer, and in January of this year, the Michigan Hate Crime Act was finally signed into law. Now let's consider, why is this so important? Why should the law separate out hate crimes from other crimes? Isn't a crime, no matter the motive? It's a fair question, and it's one I've received. The answer is this. Hate violence is different from other kinds of violence because it is terroristic in nature. There is never just one victim of a hate crime. An entire community is victimized too. These crimes are usually experienced collectively, which explains my reaction to the Pittsburgh shooting and probably some of yours' reactions to that same event. Indeed, hate crimes tell everyone who may be part of a victim's community, people like you aren't welcome. People like you don't belong. And people like you won't be safe. And those who commit hate crimes understand all too well how their actions reverberate across a wider population. In fact, it's exactly what they're counting on: to frighten, intimidate, terrorize. In some cases, the collective anguish can be worse than the crime itself. That's why these strengthened laws are critical. And that's why I'm incredibly proud to have accomplished what I set out to do in my first term, strengthening Michigan's hate crime laws into what I believe is a national gold standard, which is now the basis for legislation being introduced in several other states. Most importantly, I'm very proud to have kept my promise to the people of West Bloomfield, Commerce, and the Lakes. But I'm not just here to take a victory lap. My work and our work is far from over. While our laws are a necessary first step to ensure Michigan has the required tools to combat hate crimes, they are not a cure-all. Hate is a societal ill and a public health problem, and we need to tackle it as such. And neither new laws or the criminal justice system can fully substitute for that work. They're an important part, but not fully a substitute. Indeed, rooting out hate and extremism from our society and protecting at-risk youth from radicalization requires not just a whole-of-government effort, but a whole-of-society effort, too. It is incumbent upon each of us, individually and collectively, to cultivate spaces among our families, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, where hate has no purchase. Because no matter how much I wish it were otherwise, I cannot write or pass a bill that gets rid of anti-Semitism, or anti-Black racism, or anti-Asian racism, or homophobia, or Islamophobia. What we can do is tackle hate when it dovetails with the criminal act. What we can do is improve Michigan's tools to respond, pursue justice and accountability. What we can do is train parents, teachers, coaches, and peers to recognize signs of radicalization and intervene when necessary. What we can do is fund programs that deter hate and targeted violence in the first place. What we can do is invest in nurturing schools, safe neighborhoods, fulfilling jobs, and meaningful social outlets that provide purpose, belonging, and community to everyone. I will not lie, particularly at this political moment, it is hard not to feel like we are getting further and further away from that vision with each passing day. But no matter how long the odds may seem right now, we cannot concede that vision of a freer, fairer, and more resilient society where everyone has a chance to thrive, no matter where you come from, the color of your skin, the zip code of your home, how you worship, and who you love. That's the world I'm fighting for every day in the State House. And that's the fight that I'm committed to for the long haul. So is AG Nessel, so is Dr. Miller-Idriss, and so I hope are you. I am truly grateful to each and every one of you for being here tonight and for your support. And now I'd like to direct you to the video screen. We have a quick video, and then Rabbi Jen will come up here.
Hate crime victims in Michigan now have a resource within the Attorney General's office. Dana Nessel has officially launched a new hate crimes unit, which will both investigate and prosecute hate crimes in the state. The department plans to follow up on every credible tip, launch independent investigations, and offer resources to both local and law enforcement partners.
I've been in the fight against hate crimes which remains a first time task force to investigate and prosecute crimes against the LGBTQ community. When I came into the Department of Attorney General, we found that our department didn't even have one investigator or one prosecutor that was assigned specifically to handle hate crimes. Hate has no place in Michigan.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel joining many state lawmakers in support of expanding the state's hate crime law. The proposal on the table would overhaul the ethnic intimidation law that was put in place 35 years ago.
This comes as more hate crimes are reported across the state. Many people hope this new bill will will make a difference.
According to a report from a national civil rights group, hate crimes are up more than 80% since 2015.
By enacting this legislation, we can demonstrate that Michigan's justice system will treat hate crimes with the seriousness and severity that they are due.
The 4 bills include expanding classes that are protected under the law, those targeted on the basis of sexual and gender minorities, age, disability, ethnicity, and for houses of worship. They also seek to increase penalties for some hate crimes.
Each one of these lawmakers have a deeply personal reason to support the legislation.
My family's former place of worship fell victim to a white supremacist mass shooter.
My brother is in a wheelchair. He was in a car accident a little over 10 years ago, and this past fall he was attacked by someone who just didn't want him in their space.
The FBI notified Arbit and Attorney General Dana Nessel last month that a Michigan man threatened to harm them because they are Jewish.
And as we've seen this rise, our legal architecture to respond to hate crimes remains stuck in 1988.
State Representative Noah Arbit is very happy that his hate crimes bill has passed the Michigan House. Not easy for a rookie state representative to get any kind of a bill passed.
State Representative Noah Arbit is clapping back at some of his critics over anti-hate crime legislation.
Claims that House Bill 4474 criminalizes misgendering in individuals spread widely on conservative sites like Fox News and Breitbart. Their claims Arbit calls far-right fiction.
The misinformation and lies about this bill, the garbage about misgendering, pronouns, the rest of it, those things aren't hate crimes. They're not even regular crimes. You know what's actually a hate crime? Slashing the throat of a little 7-year-old Arab girl at a park in Detroit. You know what's actually a hate crime? A man assaulting a black postal worker and calling him the worst racial slur you can call someone. You know what's actually a hate crime? 2 boyfriends studying together at the MSU library being jumped by 6 teenagers and assaulted so brutally that they spent 6 hours in the ER, only for the county prosecutor to wave a white flag because Michigan doesn't have the legal provisions to prosecute the case.
Movement in Lansing on a set of 2 bills that would expand Michigan's hate crimes law. The House Committee on Criminal Justice approved the changes along the party line vote.
I think of my time visiting Auschwitz and Treblinka and all the family I lost during the Holocaust. I think of the violent pogroms that drove my great-grandparents to sail halfway across the world to Detroit. I think of the atrocities committed against us on October 7th. And I'm reminded what I owe to those generations who suffered persecution and violence without any semblance of accountability. All of this is why no misinformation, no lie, no false attack will ever make me concede this fight. Pass this bill. Pass this bill, Madam Speaker. Help protect not only my district, but every community across Michigan. It is time to stop playing politics with the safety of our communities. Enough. Let's go.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Attorney General Dana Nessel. Former federal prosecutor and civil rights attorney, Dana Nessel is now serving her 2nd term as Michigan's 54th Attorney General. Throughout her tenure, AG Nessel has been a staunch advocate for crime victims' rights, earning both the LACASA Center Changemaker Award and the Children's Advocacy Centers of Michigan Champion of Justice Award in recognition of her work. Upon taking office, AG Nessel launched the first state attorney general's hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit in the country. And here to tell us about her department's efforts to protect public safety, please welcome Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Looking at those videos, I can say one thing very definitively, and that's, Noah, you have aged better than I have, for sure. There's no question about it. So, good evening, everybody. Thanks again to Rep. Arbit for inviting me to participate. Thank you, Rabbi Luzny Temple Israel for hosting this event. And thank you so much to Dr. for us to be working on in this time, in this space, to make sure that we're working together to tackle the mounting issues of violent extremism, certainly dividing our communities. I will say this to follow up on some of the things that Noah talked about. yeah, I could not believe how hard it was for him to get these bills passed. They just seemed like no-brainers to me. And you run for these offices to have some sense of agency, and so that you can be in the room where it happens. But then you get it, and it's like an escape room, and you can't wait to claw your way out. So it is not an exaggeration to say that Noah made a lot of enemies in Lansing trying to get these bills through, because he was so doggedly determined to make sure that it happened. And somehow, Noah, you did it. So honestly, not just, I don't just thank you, because I personally believe it's the right thing. I think he was the top law enforcement official of the state for, at long last, giving us at least some tools in our toolbox to actually hold people accountable properly when they commit these very heinous and disturbing types of crimes that we otherwise have very little that we can do about anything about. And an interesting point I want to make about that as well is that when the original Ethnic Intimidation Act was passed some 35 years ago, not very strong, better than what we had, but still not great. It was co-sponsored by, flaming left-wing radicals such as John and Connie Binsfield, if you remember her. I mean, these were conservative Republicans that supported these bills. But then 35 years later, you can barely find any Republicans at all, and then you had all these issues with Democrats as well. I mean, it was insane that something so simple as protecting people from being the victim of hate crimes could be controversial, and yet it is now for some reason. As the state's top law enforcement official, I did try to make it a point, having handled so many of these types of incidences as a prosecutor, having represented people who committed those crimes as a defense attorney, working with that organization I talked about that focused on investigating and then also prosecuting, working with local prosecutors to prosecute hate crimes. I mean, there was a significant need for it, and we know, of course, the numbers showed that an exponential rise in hate crimes of all sorts, but especially in anti-Semitic incidents. Some 400% increase, I believe, was found in 2023 from the previous year alone. Just insane numbers. Michigan seeing over 250 reported incidents of hate crimes in a single year. And important to note that those numbers are so low compared to the actual number of hate crimes, because these are some of the most underreported types of crimes that we have. It's still just so unlikely that anybody even reports a hate crime, let alone that the case ultimately ends up moving forward to prosecution, let alone that somebody is convicted of it. We know the impact of these types of crimes. We know how intensely personal and targeted they make a person feel, even if you are not the individual who was actually targeted, because these crimes target not people as much as they target communities of people. And 50% of hate crimes occur at homes and residences. Another quarter occurred in public spaces like highways, roads, sidewalks. Important to remember that hate bias incidents are driven by various forms of prejudice, of course, and whether that be race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability status. It benefits us all to rally for stronger protections to keep every Michigan resident safer in the long run. And I am going to say this from experience, people who commit hate crimes don't just commit hate crimes. And I say that because I've seen time and time again where you have a hate crime that went unsolved until later on you found that person had committed a crime, a very assaultive crime, sometimes a murder against someone else. And so it behooves us all to take these cases very, very seriously. 4 out of 5 reported hate crimes in Michigan targeted not property, not institutions, but people. So what is a hate crime? Well, a hate crime is defined as a criminal act committed against a person, group or their property motivated by prejudice or bias against protected characteristics. And hate